another week running Casuals Corner, which leads us to our obvious introduction. Welcome back, and as always, dear diary. And this week I wanted to add a couple of words to that, but before I let you know why and what that is, settle down, relax. If you're listening to it on a dog walk or a walk, or Joe if you're listening, Lewis if you're listening, I very much appreciate when you play these through. Honestly, I genuinely mean it. It really, really means a lot. And these days you become very desensitized online, especially when you run social media accounts, just to see numbers and figures. They're constantly changing. And at times you see big ones and sometimes you don't see as big ones. But when it's a long form podcast and you guys actually check in, you listen, and then you even often drop me messages off the back of it, I really do appreciate that. So I'm glad it's bringing value, and it's fun that you're on a journey as well. So obviously I welcome any newcomer. But the reason I was saying about the name is because I want to introduce it by Dear Diary of a Wantrepreneur. And a wantrepreneur in Urban Dictionary is basically someone that wants to be an entrepreneur, someone that likes the idea of putting it in their bio and saying it to their friends because it's cool and it's trendy. And I always hear Gary Vee talk about it, and it always makes me laugh because this is what I have the memory of. When we were very, very young, when you heard the term entrepreneur, it meant an unwashed geek in his basement trying to stick together some crazy contraption he was trying to sell to a wacky scientist for millions. And you was basically just a loser at home with no money. That was essentially how it was. It wasn't some cool term and whatnot, and that's how I saw it. And especially when you're young, and what I've spoke about before is when I started realizing that I wanted to work for myself and run my own business at sort of like 9 and whatnot, you don't even know the term entrepreneur. You actually have no idea what that means. It's literally a case of, I want my job to be something I want to do. It comes as simply as that, but it translates essentially into the same thing down the road. And the same as Casuals Corner, really. Entrepreneur is the worst term in the entrepreneur landscape, and I hate that term myself because you'll never find me with that in the bio for Casuals Corner or anything like that, because it isn't. It's when fighters have their first pro fight just so they can put pro fighter. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to establish a legacy and create a long lasting name and brand. I don't care for a title or anything in that description. So it's funny to have wantrepreneur because it's a play on word, and obviously it's terrible, and hopefully if people actually pay enough attention, they'll realize that it's very much not the case. It's not the case I'm trying to chase fame or trying to chase a ridiculous amount of wealth or notoriety or pretty much none of that, to be perfectly honest. Just a case of actually trying to progress a business, progress a brand, and take you along the process with me. So I thought that was a nice way to sort of open it up. Diaries of Wantrepreneur. Dear Diary. And it also makes me think of Alex Hormozy, who said he was reading this book and it said in it, he was about 23, I think, along those lines. He was at a crossroads in his life. All that coming through my head then was "Meet me at the crossroads." That was on the radio this week, and I was thinking, that song is still living. Crazy. But he was at a crossroads with his life, and he heard someone say, "This is a wantrepreneur." He said, "Don't be a wantrepreneur." And he said he read it and he felt attacked. He was like, that is what I'm doing. I'm not one of those people. And I feel like I went through that as well. I really, really did. I felt like when I assessed what I was doing it and how I was doing it, although my intention was always a good one, I wanted to go down the right path, I wasn't doing the correct steps necessary to really, really evolve. I just wasn't. And maybe that's something that I'll just lead straight into, which is what I put in the notes as well, is that's one thing I could definitely do better. One thing I'm improving is now I don't watch my content back and think, oh, okay, what I've done well in regards to good improvements I've made. And it's cool to acknowledge them, that's fine. But I need to shift my focus more to, right, what's missing here? Or how can I A-B test this? In theory, it basically means how can I make the same video but do a little bit different, so I can see little changes and what works. Because that's what happens when you're talking about content and short form and even long form in a lot of ways, is you have to get creative, and then you have to start leveling up how you perceive yourself. Because if you perceive yourself as someone who's just, I just create videos and post them out, and it's like, I kind of enjoy it and whatnot, fine, that's cool. You don't have to take it further than that. But if your thinking is of such, but you want to go to the next level, you won't if you have that mindset, if that makes sense. Which I never had that mindset. I knew the end goal was obviously a big brand, but I was probably behaving like that. My mindset wasn't like that, but I was probably behaving like that. And then I just had to switch that. You have to switch that, and you have to start paying attention. Right, okay, this particular video went super viral. Let's actually break it down, have a look at the mechanics of it. How long was it? What sort of story did it tell? What emotion did it provoke? Did it cut scenes? Did it tell you the story in the title? Did it have any title? Was it a full screen 9:16 ratio? Was it a 9:16 ratio with a blurry background? If it was a blurry background, was it vaguely transparent or fully opaque? Did it have a title the whole way through, or just the first 3 seconds? Was it the first 3 seconds of the hook and then they went to a second hook, which was the next 3 seconds, which was another subtitle? Was it a voiceover? Was it a voiceover with text, no face? Was it a face, text, no voiceover? I could go on all day, but this is really my point. It's just constant testing. And when you start perceiving yourself as that, okay, right, now I have to be a professional, I have to level up. And this is what it goes on to say. I've spoke the last couple of weeks about identity, and I'm just shifting my identity in different regards to my business. The week before, it was fitness, which is always a correlation to your business and brand or anything that you're personally doing ever. So that was my identity then. And what I'm working on now is just actually identifying as a media outlet and taking that deeper, because I've always said that, but now I've added on a layer to that. A professional media outlet, a legitimate business, a business where I see the name, which I always did on those sort of boards, but actually behaving like that now, not just thinking it. Because now I've done too long where I've just thought it, and now I have to actually execute. So what does that actually look like? You might be sat there thinking, what are you talking about? Well, it's little changes to my day to day, which is just allowing me to level up in different areas, and whatever area that may be. It may be editing, it may be sound design, it may be posting or being more frequent with editing, all these different things. So this week, how that looked was, it was a very simple adjustment. But I said before, I changed all my sound transitions, all my sound effects, all my songs. I put them all into groups, named them all, tagged them all, and put them into my hard drive. And now I've got a place on my hard drive where I have everything in regards to clips I haven't posted, clips that I can post, different projects, and then different sound designs and breakdowns. And now I can go and find them easy. That's a big way of where I've just upped my professionalism, upped my consistency with my branding, and then I've also just increased my efficiency in regards to how I can churn a video out, because now I can add 10 layers of sound design in a minute, whereas before I had to go and like swoosh, cat walking over litter, gravel. You have to find some weird sounds sometimes to accommodate what you want to try and find. And that's a whole skill that I've mentioned before in regards to sound design, which is just, I mean, it's kind of a nice segue really, because I was chatting to my sister yesterday, which it goes on to say that I've had quite a interesting week in regard to, I felt like this weekend, in truth, was a very small, subtle, yet beginner introduction into what a life balancing a business, family, friends, and then also employees, also events, navigating brand deals, all these different things, because all those different things have happened this week. And of course, 10 years on, I imagine all of the leverage points to be so much higher, because the brand should be so much bigger. So these are going to be more catastrophic events in regards to the things that I'll be doing. But essentially, I feel like I got a little look into the future of how to balance them all, because I had a really terrible moral dilemma of the card that I was super excited to work on fight style, which was in the Indigo O2, which is an amateur MMA card, which I had full access to. I could go anywhere I wanted to film. I could do anything I wanted. I've worked there a couple of times, so I basically sort of had free roam in the place, which when I'm at the O2, usually with Cage Warriors, is a little bit more restrictive, and I can't really get a lot of intimate sort of angles and whatnot from different places that I've not actually been before. So I had that, which was super cool. And then I remembered that my mum had a big birthday family event planned, and it just hit me in a wave of realizing that not only had I sorted my press credentials for quite a long time, I'd also sorted someone else's out so that they could come in with my brand to do work with me. So essentially you're looking at like an employee part-time, of course, or like freelance if you like, but in that sort of essence, people coming in with you now are feeling like another level of responsibility, only on a small scale, of course, but another level of responsibility. And I thought, oh my goodness, if that's the case, that'll be another event of theirs that I was going to go to, but I couldn't make it for whatever reason. And then also I've got another person relying on me. I thought, I can't miss this. I just can't miss it. But then of course I couldn't miss the family thing because it was my mum, and it was the only time that she would have seen her kids together, and that's a really special thing for her. So I wouldn't, and that happens very rarely, so I wouldn't ever strip her of that if it was down to me. So I thought, I've got to do both. I've got to, because I had the GBTV episode riding on it as well, in regards to I didn't go down to the gym this week because I knew I was going there and there was loads of fighters on that card, so I was going to document it similarly to how I done Frank's fight and do a similar episode this week. But then I thought, oh my goodness, then I got no footage of this week either, and then I'll miss a GBTV episode. And now I'm so dedicated to that every Tuesday, doing an episode, whatever. That is just this building anxiety in my body that this subconscious has now developed because I've done it consistently. Of, oh my word, it's getting to Friday, I've got no footage. Of course, the second mindset to that, worst comes to worst, I've got a ton of footage. I could have played around with it. I just have to improvise. I could have done it. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But saying that, there was a lot of content there that I wanted to document. So I thought, right, how can I do this? I knew I wasn't going to be there all night, but I just wanted to go there, literally film one or two people from GB Top Team, get some establishing shots and leave, go straight back home. I thought, because obviously it's going to finish late and then everyone would have been gone by the time I got back. I couldn't be the only person not to go there. So I thought, right, what can I do? I didn't know if it was the right or wrong decision, to be perfectly honest, because like I said, this never happens. It never happens. So if I was the one to prevent that from happening, all our children together at the same place, I would have hated that. I would literally have hated myself for that. So I decided to get up early on the Saturday and just help with everything. I just done everything. I've flipping steamed floors and carried heavy things and cooked things. I was flipping dicing vegetables and all sorts, making the perfect little chopsticks so they could go in the spring rolls and whatnot. I was doing it all, done it all, put a hard shift in so that when it came to 4, I could slide out. And I knew my mum was just going to be a bit upset because she gets stressed around those times because she just gets anxious. She just wants everything to be perfect, everyone to have just enjoy everything as much as possible. Like, she couldn't care herself about, she'll probably, a lot of the time, she never enjoys those things. She's just so stressed, and like, that is just how much of a people pleaser she is. But so I knew she'd be high stress, so I just slipped out. I was like, Mum, I just got to drop this into London for work. I'll be back in a minute. And then obviously I felt guilty, but I went there. Like I said, I went in. It was a slick operation. I've been there before. I knew where to go. I knew what I wanted. I went in there with a mission, a plan. I wrote the notes down. Like I said, I treat this as a professional endeavor now. I'm not messing about. And the more professional I can be, the more I can actually enjoy the moment because I'm more dialed into what I need to do. So my next step is clearer. So then I'm not actually thinking, do I need to go here, do this, stand here, I'm more confident, and also I know exactly what I want. So now I can just confidently be in the moment, do what I need to do, but also enjoy the moment, which is really nice. Because before, you've obviously got that crazy frantic thought of, what's ISO on the camera? What shutter speed? What settings shall I have it? Oh my goodness, I've accidentally clicked the button. I've cancelled the settings I've had it on that someone else has put it on, and they were perfect, and this is rubbish, and now they're different. It's a million different issues that you're going to overcome. And it sort of links quite nicely onto a story of when I actually was there. I managed to get really tight and close next to the cage, and there was this lady next to me, and she was just taking photos, and she was just deleting some as she went along. And I said, oh, that's a good idea. It saves you a headache in post editing when you have to go through them if they're a bit refined. And we were just chatting, and she said about here was quite a cool place to shoot. And I said, yeah, it's cool because I get to come cage side usually when I'm at Cage Warriors. I'm usually at the front of one night. And she said, oh, Cage Warriors. She said, I had the biggest smile on my face. She went, you must be a proper photographer, like an actual photographer. I laughed at her and said, I was in the back room Googling what ISO was with a media band on, with a camera that wasn't mine, that I didn't know how to focus on, a shutter speed that was way off and hadn't taken one clear picture. And then she said, that takes some balls. And I thought, I get it, because it does. And I was thinking about this before I jumped on the call, and even when she said it, it does. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it doesn't. And it actually, if I was to dismiss the entire process, it would be to dismiss a lot of years of when I wouldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have done those things. I wouldn't have developed the confidence. But that's just like tiny chippings away over the years to just get to a point where it's like, oh, you know what, I'll give it a go. But it just got to that point where the question is, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? You don't do it. That's the only alternative. You've only got two options. You can try. Closed mouths don't get fed. They don't. So you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm going to stop saying cliche sentences, but they're just perfect. They're perfectly true. It's just like, you don't ask, you don't get. I've said it before and I'll say it again, is people say, oh, what's good ways to get this or do this? Message them. Have you messaged them a nice message, maybe? Just like, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm just, have you dropped them a message and just said what you like about their content or fight style, or why you enjoy watching their journey, or things you've picked up along the way, or what some things they've taught them, or skills you've used that you've seen them use in the octagon, or what you're telling me? If you've got no mutual connection that you can make whatsoever, that you can sort of guide in a nice way, then just don't message a person, because it's probably not going to be an authentic message, and that relationship's probably going to be forced in any way that you set it up. And to be honest, like that's just my ethos of doing things. That's really not how you have to do it. But I just, from what I've seen is natural to me, and what I've seen people like the Gary V's and the Stephen Bartlett's and Alex Hormozzi's of the world say, is that pays off if you just sort of stick to that narrative and that thinking. So it kind of I'm reading the notes I've written down here whilst before I got to the next one. I just have a sip of water, and it brings me on to the first note that I actually made throughout the week, which was, whilst I was away, I finally understood the full saying of master of all trades. And I'll tell you the relevance to that story, because I don't mean this in an arrogant way. And if you listen to me every week, you'll see why I don't mean this in an arrogant way. I just mean it in a way of, if I achieve what I believe that I can and that I'm capable of achieving, the repercussions are fairly consistent with what I've seen people achieve. So the reason I say that is because in sort of 5 years, I expect to be on people's podcasts and for them to ask me questions about how I started my business or grew my brand or whatever else. I expect that. I anticipate that. And you have to, in a certain way, if you think that you're going to do good things, because that's inevitable, or it should be inevitable. And the reason I say that is because I'm going to reflect on the story and the journey, and maybe there's going to be a time someone asks, what was the switching point or the changing point or whatnot? And you're never going to be able to put that down to one single moment. There's many moments, and they all compound, and then sometimes it's one that just tips you over. It's not always necessarily that, but it's just usually an accumulation. But there was one time that I can clearly remember. And I remember there just being a really significant shift in my mindset. And the reason it felt so significant was because it's a shift in mindset that I'd had my entire life up until then, when I was 24 years of age. So that's why it felt so significant. And I'll tell you when it was. I was laying on my bed. I was sitting on the end of my bed. And I'm not ashamed to say that I had my whiteboard in front of me. It was about 3 a.m. I'm sat on the edge of the bed. It's sort of this weird haze between lockdown and not lockdown, and it is lockdown. And I was working at Virgin at the time, and I was just in a very, very strangely toxic workforce, which for me was actually the first time ever experiencing that. And I've had 1,000,001 jobs, which was super strange. So really toxic workforce, sort of losing and falling out of love of what I did, and feeling a little bit lost, knowing I was always going to do my own thing and thinking it was going to be fitness and I was going to leverage that and scale it online and use a James Smith business model, and I was just gearing up towards that, to be honest. And even in a very short space of time, I became quickly one of the busiest PTs on the gym floor. And again, this isn't arrogant, this is just what happened. And I did that a really long game. I wasn't pushy. I didn't go in people's faces and try and sell them and shove courses in front of their faces. I saw a lot of people do that. I would just do it in a way because, one, I wasn't that confident to charge those prices, first and foremost. It was a lot of money and it weren't even hour sessions. So I'd never delivered it for someone outside friends or family, really. So I was now asking for a lot of money, thousands of pounds in chunk payments. I now had to become a salesman, a PT, a marketeer, and everything rolled into one. And it was absolutely terrifying, to be perfectly honest. And if you spoke to anyone that has ever met me, I don't think anyone's going to say I'm the most outspoken and loudest, and I don't think anyone's going to say I'm the shyest or quietest. I don't think anyone's going to sort of tell you that I'm timid or shy. It just has never really been me. But there's levels to that. And I'm not a level where I'm a person that could just go up to anyone in the gym and chat to them and try and sell them a £2,000 course. It's just, I don't have that level of comfort with people. I don't like coming with an ulterior motive first and foremost, because then I feel I'm instantly on the defense of just how I have to portray the conversation. It doesn't feel as natural to me. So I didn't do that. I just provided value, quite simply. I spent a lot of hours on the gym floor. I'd get there at 7, 8, and then I would leave at 10. And I wouldn't spend every hour buzzing around and just doing loads of hard work. And I was just there. I would chat to people. I'd say hello to everyone. I remembered everybody's name. And weirdly enough, that job, I strongly believe that, again, when I'm on this podcast, they're going to ask me about jobs I've had and things of that nature. And I'm going to say that to anyone, the best advice is going to be, you have to taste different jobs. You have to be on the other side of the foot when you're younger. Not only for the fact to learn leverage and just leveraging your time for money, and then eventually you can scale that to when you're leveraging labor and online and then coding and whatever else, media. But also just to earn a bit of cash, understand money, understand how money for time works, understand how just all of that works, understanding having horrible bosses and crappy jobs and what it feels like mentally and physically to go through the demands of these jobs. And even though they're not maybe difficult at the time, what it requires and the hours and the times and whatever else. It just gives you so much more insight into all of these. So you go into there with a lot more empathy. Any job that you have, you have a lot more empathy. So not only is that better from that perspective, I had to say hello to people and ask them their name. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I would never, ever, in any situation, just go up to a random person, ever, and just chat to them. And then even a small thing, it's like, I used to be uncomfortable in conversation when I was departing a conversation to ask for someone's name if I hadn't asked for it already, because we'd just spoken without introducing with names, because you don't often do that in informal conversations. If you bump into someone at the water fountain, you don't say, "Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Derek. Oh, it's quite nice and cold, isn't it?" You just go, "Oh, it's quite cold here, isn't it?" Just in passing conversation. So you don't introduce with names. So I used to always have a weird social discomfort of asking someone's name as they were sort of departing. And I know it sounds stupidly simple, but it was actually a crazy change. And if you read How to Win Friends and Influence People, they speak about how important it is to know people's names and address them by their names and use their names, and how much it attaches your meaning of conversation to them and how much more interested they are when you address them. And I started thinking about that, and I started using that, and I started doing that a lot more. So not only did I got more comfortable asking, I also got more comfortable addressing people by name, which meant I could get to know them and get more comfortable with them socially. And that's why I got so many customers and clients after a while, because they saw that I could be just in conversation, but also know what I'm talking about if needs be, provide value, provide help. I wasn't trying to sign them up to a course every time I gave them one slice of advice. And that's just the model I sort of used. And I knew that in the short run, I wasn't going to have the highest selling statistics of the month. I just wasn't, because it wasn't my approach. There was a people over there that was just anyone that was doing a press up, they'd try and force courses into for £800. And you have to think as well, what people don't realise is, I think some PTs with a little bit of a lack of empathy don't realise sometimes they're in unbelievable shape. They might be tanned, do their teeth, got a six pack, in good condition, well put together, and they're walking towards someone who doesn't feel confident about themselves, doesn't know what they're doing in the gym, and you're just steaming over towards them, trying to shove £1,000 in front of their face and say, sign it, and essentially look like me. It's like, it's not what you're verbally saying, but it's kind of subconsciously what people have got. So you have to do things to break down those barriers. I found like I had to, and I wanted to make people feel at ease in the process. And I think the long game of being there for hours, actually caring about people, get results, and providing value first, then saw me as one of the quickest growing personal trainers they'd ever seen at the entire branch. People were there for 7 years that were having like 6 clients, and I was there for about 8 months, and I had like over 20. And then I started realizing, I was like, right, okay, cool, I can make the James Smith model. And I was listening to a lot of the time and saw how he strategized his business, and I thought, cool, I've got someone that I can relate to in a lot of ways, and he's just executed on exactly what I want to execute on. Cool, I can take so much from him, and I did. And that's just where I thought I was going to go. And then I found mixed martial arts. And like I said, I was at that weird time, which circles back to the story and why I originally went there with that story. I was in this weird limbo of where I just started my Instagram page. I had no followers. I had been making content, but it was rubbish. It was a sport I didn't know anything about. It was a complex sport. It was a sport with quite a tough barrier to entry sometimes, because you're not really allowed to have bad takes or poor takes. You get seeded out pretty quickly, and if you're not doing it intentionally, it's not kind of what you want. So you have to be a little bit strategic with that. I had no money, no income. It was the first time in my life that I had no money. I had literally, from the age of 10, I just saved money. I'd have a paper round, I'd do a few odd jobs for people here and there. I just always lived within my means. I always lived within my means. I just never done anything spent crazy. I always spent my money on traveling, but I would save it up a lot just from work. I wouldn't buy clothes very often. If I did buy clothes for the best part of a decade, it would be off Depop. I'd even then resell those clothes 5 years down the line after wearing them a million times for even sometimes more than I bought them for. Just all these different things where I just try and cut costs a little bit and just try and the truth is, after a while, it just becomes so subconscious, you don't think anything of it. And sometimes people look from the exterior and they see it as these great sacrifices. But when you just hardwire yourself like that, like I felt like I did from when I was like 10 years old, it's not really that difficult. And I think I always done a good job of having a really good gauge of knowing how to scale my lifestyle in regards to where I can actually still spend money and enjoy myself and have a good time, but also scale it to where I can actually just save as much as I can as well. And I feel like literally from a very young age, I've always been very good at that. For myself personally, it's always a personal gauge. There's a lot of people who would just say to me, well, I just love buying designer clothes. Fair enough. Like, you know what I mean? If I've put on a Gucci coat before, to be perfectly honest, I'd never put one on. I put one on, I was like, I understand why people pay £400. This is absolutely incredible on my skin. This silk's unbelievable. And the colour of the blue, you can tell. I've seen the videos behind how they create dyes and inks in India from the original colour source, and they dye it onto things like silks. And I started seeing that the mastery in the art of the clothes, and I start thinking, well, if that's your genuine love and you want to pay £400 on that, and you wear that loads of times, and every time you feel like that, that's kind of a sweet investment, to be honest. Never even thought of it like that, to be perfectly honest. It just isn't necessarily my number one priority or that high for me. And to be honest, I think I can always do it on an absolute dime anyway, because give me a Depop flipping DM and a few messages, and I think I'm going to get some good deals on there. I think I'm going to get some good deals. But it goes back. I was in a weird place. I had no money for the first time, really. I'd always saved. Always tried to just sell things I didn't need, or just sort of live fairly minimal. And always just tried to save a little bit of money. And I don't mean hundreds of thousands of pounds, of course not. You know, I'm still 15, working £6 an hour and whatnot, but I'm still saying that whenever I was a young kid, I would always try and have a box, and it was just put as much cash in there. And when you're young, you don't spend a lot of money because you can't really go anywhere, you can't really do anything. I used to just go around the field, and if it was anything from the cricket club, I'd usually get it for free because I was working there and I'd be getting paid. So it was sort of the best setup, because I'd be getting paid, I'd be chatting to my mates, and I'd be getting all the free stuff. It was actually the perfect job, and I'm always grateful for it. Because I used to work at the bar from about 15, pulling pints. Work by myself, work with other people, didn't really matter. I used to work events, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, full time pretty much. Used to spend all my time there playing pool, table tennis, watching TV, cricket, football. Get all my mates down. Obviously keep them sweet. Get paid for it. And obviously get anything behind the bar for free. It was an unbelievable job. Funded my childhood. And it was amazing. And this is the thing, is just, you have to put yourself in these positions, you know. You have to put yourself in these positions. I always put myself in positions to just be that. I was just that weird kid probably who just, well, I just walk around and be like, look, give me a £5, I'll collect the glasses. You know what I mean? And in truth, I never even used to ask. Back in the day, I never used to ask, and now I don't even really. I'm getting to a point where I've always learned that if you provide enough value, you don't ask. Because I actually never asked, because I was never confident enough as like a 9-year-old to be asking an adult to give me money. I just wasn't. I didn't have that confidence. I just felt like a tiny, timid 9-year-old, to be perfectly honest. I was always very conscious of that. But I would always just go and do things like that. I'd always go and do things like that anyway, because I thought, I could probably help. And then I was like, might get a little sweetener, might get a can of Iron Brew, touch. You know what I mean? And I always set my expectation low, because when your expectations are set low, then I heard Naval Ravikant say that, and I really like it. And obviously it's a little bit cliche, but it's so true. And when you understand it to its fullest, it's quite powerful, because you realise you can only be unhappy with something if your expectations aren't met. So if you keep your expectations fairly low for most things, as long as you can sort of keep them within some realm of realism, then you leave a lot of room to enjoy it more than you're going to not enjoy it. And that's why you see a lot of people that they go to Michelin star restaurants, and sometimes they enjoy the food way less than they'd enjoy a McDonald's on a Friday, because their expectations when they're going into that restaurant is they think that this is going to be the most transcending meal of their life, and if it's anything less, then it's a failure and a waste of money. And that's hard to live up to. It's hard to live up to for anything. But if you go in there with just a little bit less expectation and just think, right, I'm paying for the experience, let me try and appreciate every nuance. It's kind of cool when the waiter comes over and they do the duck l'orange and they're flaming it in front of me, or the pancakes l'orange, or whatever it is, you know. They do in the French restaurants where they bring it over and make it in front of you, and you see the skill and the showmanship, and then you start appreciating the cutlery that they're using that is thousands of years old probably, and crafted out of gold from the 18th centuries, out of steel works from Sheffield. And of course I'm just going off on a tangent and being elaborate, but you see my point. You start seeing the small details and you start appreciating the smaller things, and you go in there with a little bit more of a mindset to actually enjoy the process, rather than going in on the defense thinking I don't want to enjoy the process, and then if it doesn't deliver you're going to hate it, rather than, right, okay, paid the money, let's go in there and see what happens. Keep circling me back to the sentence, and I'll tell you why. Sitting on the end of the bed, I was in tears. I'll be honest, I was in tears. I felt lost. I had no money, no idea. Started this page, wanted to do it, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know the sport, didn't know how to make money, didn't really see any other people making money, didn't know where to start, knew it was going to be a long journey, and thought, I've done everything else. Like, really, I've done the worst jobs, the rubbish jobs, the labour jobs, the dirty jobs, the filthy jobs, the fun jobs, the media jobs, the banking jobs, the city jobs, the cash in hand jobs, the bar works, the restaurant jobs, the factory jobs. I've done all the jobs from a very young age. So I got to a point at 25 where I'd done 15 years essentially of work, and I had quite a good grasp of what I wanted to do at that point, and it was nothing that I wanted to do other than what I wanted to do. And I thought, right, I had one last job, one last removals, putting up furniture, just early mornings. Joe, if you're listening to this and you've got this far, I know you'll be smiling. Getting up at 4 a.m. and you get a text saying you're up at 4, you know you're outside of London. You know you're on the first ferry to nausea and early morning crust, filling up your eyes in a broken down lorry with someone that can't hear or speak. There's no engine in the motor. Everyone stinks. You're crammed in. People just don't want you to be there because you're not very good. But why would you be good? Because they've been on the tools for 20 years and know every trick in the trade. You've done it for 5 minutes. They're miserable as anything. They're just moaning all day. It's hot. You're carrying fridges or flipping breeze blocks up stairs to the 10th floor. You forgot your lunch because you went to bed late because you were just shattered. The night you couldn't go to the gym because you were physically exhausted, and mentally you just hated yourself. You took off your fleece, which was just covered in dust, threw it to the floor, ready to start another day in your stinking boots and your dusted up trousers. Oh, my BO ridden top because I just stopped caring. My hair was long, my skin looked crap, my sheets probably weren't washed as many times as they should, and I started just identifying myself as someone who didn't care for their appearance physically, mentally. I was just going downhill, I was spiraling. I started telling myself, everyone kept looking at me and saying, are you okay? Are you okay? They started saying that to me. People kept saying that to me, and they were right to, because I couldn't take this expression off my face anymore, and it was like every day it just grew a degree closer, and I didn't want it to be like that, and I was trying it not to be like that, but I got into this hole. And I'm not saying everyone would have got into that, I'm just saying I got into this hole. I got into this hole because in my head I had these ideas from when I was 9 years old. I was going to start my own business. I was going to catch the timing of a wave very nicely. I was going to apply my passion, things I'd always loved doing, which was being creative and coming up with ideas and sport, all these things, like food, all these things I'd said, documented when I was 9 years old. 9 years old, I'm sitting there in the front room with my mum. All of these things. And now uni's finished. And everyone's saying, well, you're going to get a grad job. Everyone at uni saying, well, you've got to look for a grad job, or what grad job you're going to get, or what you're going to do. I'm saying I'm going to do my own thing. Like, yeah, but what grad job are you going to get? I'm not getting a grad job. What do you mean? You've just gone to uni for 4 years. You've got a good 2-1. You flipping nearly got a 1-1. Nearly got first degree. What do you mean? I'm saying I never went to university for that degree. I just needed to go to uni. Always knew this. To enjoy it, because I knew it'd be fun. You're going to work for 60 years. You might as well have 4 years of fun. I mean, what dent's that going to make? And you're doing it at fun times where you've got no responsibility. You get to live with your mates and just live every day like a party. I mean, my mum literally told me from 10 years old, she said, you do not have to do anything you don't want to do. Be happy at the first and forefront. If you don't want to go uni, don't go uni. My older brother didn't want to go. He didn't go. My mum was happy. She wasn't upset. But she did say to me, she said, I'll be perfectly honest with you. It was one of the best times of my life. It was one of the best times of my life. And it's a great experience. And did I go to university thinking that my business degree was going to catapult me to the level of Elon Musk? No. Did not expect it. Did not anticipate that. Knew that it wouldn't. I just simply thought that if I do a business degree, my chances of being able to pass it and turn up to almost no lectures or seminars are fairly high. Because I feel like my level of basic understanding, just a basic principle level of understanding of these different marketing or business or selling or all these different things, and then just an okay, decent level enough English to portray my message, I thought I can at least pass at a bare minimum. I can just pass. And I did. And I did. And I've done that, and everyone's saying, right, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? I'm saying, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to be a personal trainer. Like, why are you going to be a personal trainer? You just went to uni. I was like, I'm just going to do it until I find something else to do, or if I really enjoy it, I'm just going to carry on doing it. Why not? Why not? So that's what I started doing. And then I started hating that. Now I'm in a position where I'm working this job. I'm telling myself, right, I'm going to do MMA full time, and I'm going to work this job once a week. And then I work this job once a week, and then I do MMA stuff full time the rest of the week. And then it's getting to the end of the month, and I'm realizing, right, I've basically got no money. Like, you work one day a week, you get no money, especially when you're on those wages. So, and I shouldn't have been paid more. I don't actually think I should have been paid more a lot of the times. I know a lot of people whinged and whined. I actually don't think I should have been paid more. Really. Don't think so. Don't think my, like, just physically being there was worth, I think it was £11 an hour. And I come from a place where I've got £2 a day before, £3 a day, £4 an hour when I was a bit older. So when I was 11, I was like, ain't even that bad. Ain't even that bad. Because I know I can limit my lifestyle so cheap. I can stack on £11 a day, and people think I'm funny. It's like, I actually do look at it like that. I look at it like that, and that's funny now, because where it circles into where I'm looking at brand deals and sponsorships now, and you start even looking at really small end brand deals where it's just one or two things maybe you're doing super easy and quick. You may be looking at like a £300 deal, and sometimes I can easily live a month off of £300 easily, and I do, because I just don't do anything that isn't work. Or if I go out, if it's recreational, it's just with friends for free, playing tennis, or chill around each other's house, or go for a walk, or walk the dog, or whatnot, or maybe just flip and get a few snacks and have a picnic in a field. And got to that level of my life. And not only, to be honest, does it actually dial you into enjoying those things a lot more. I actually do. I start enjoying less glamorous and glitz and glams things, but things a little bit more intimate. Just one-on-one time, being in a forest or beach, or just going for a stroll, walking a dog, whatever it may be. Quite enjoy it. A lot of benefits to it. You get some steps in. It's just, I feel like you get good conversation. I feel like you get a lot off your chest. I don't know. I enjoy it. I just enjoy doing those things now. And I was always sort of a little bit that way inclined, but now more so than ever, just because I need to save money. And we're going back full 180 last time about the switch, is because when I went away, I spoke to this girl, and I said to her that I flipped this switch when she was just super interested in a few people I was interested in terms of philosophy and things, and we were just chatting when we was having a workout, I think it was. She happened to be from London, and she was quite into the psychology and mindset podcast. I was interested, so I started talking to her about it, and I mentioned I sort of flipped the switch when I realised my whole life I felt limited and felt a little bit handicapped and incapable of achieving certain things, because I felt like I wasn't special, or I didn't shine in one particular area. And I used to always have a very victim complex. Why can't I be a Ronaldo or Messi? And I wouldn't say it like that. I wouldn't think it as extreme as that. But I would start to identify that's what it was. And you start manifesting it by saying things as, oh, I wish I had skills in that, like that person or that person. And it starts just weaving its way into your life and your mindset, and then you just start entrenching it into the tapestry of your mind, and then all of a sudden you start manifesting it subconsciously without even realizing. And I've done that for a seriously long time, and I sat there one day and I just thought, hold up, I used to always think a jack of all trades, master of none was super applicable to what I'd done. Whether it was I was playing sport and it was talking about my well-roundedness, whether it was about any subject or anything I'd done, anything you can get a grade in, a score in, anything was always probably a little bit better than the average person, not the best and not the worst. It was just always like that. It was just always like that. Probably okay, not the best, not the worst. And I used to always think that was such a setback. And then one day I realised, I just thought, you know what? That may be an advantage for me. And maybe the fact that I do like to dabble in a little bit of everything may be quite powerful, because when you start a business or something like what I'm doing, it is quite handy to have fingers in a few pies, so you know and have a little basic understanding of editing, of sound, of short form content, long form content, editing, hooks, titles, thumbnails, because when you're inevitably having conversations with people that work in this field, you're going to get a better outcome, and you're going to be able to filter better people to work with if you have an in-depth understanding of these platforms. And you should also know them well, because then you know what they can elevate above your skill and what they can improve on, and where you can find the perfect person that can make the fit. And that's when you start elevating your game, really. And the reason I bring up the girl that I met in the gym is because I was speaking to her and I said that because she said something back similar to me. And she said, well, you do know the full quote, don't you? And I said, no. She said, the full quote is, "Jack of all trades, master of none, is often better than the master of one." And I just laughed. I laughed because I thought, I've lived my whole life. I've lived 24 years up to that point, only knowing half of that quote. And up until the 24th year, I never figured out that actually maybe there was some strength in being a little bit of a jack of all trades. And I figured it out. And then about a month later, someone I've never met before, in a random conversation I've probably never had with anyone ever before, tells me that full quote. And it just made me laugh. I thought, could this have spared 15 years of thought? I don't know. Probably not, to be perfectly honest. And the cliche things always happen for a reason. It's true. I feel like those things, those eureka moments, sometimes they just take time, and sometimes you know them, and then they just have a sort of secondary eureka moment in your head 10 years down the line. And that's the fun thing with this game you play. Sometimes you just get these light bulb moments that just make sense, and it just shifts your mindset a little bit, and it allows you to explore different paths and different avenues, and allow you just to be a little bit more creative in a lot of senses. So it's just a thought I had this week that was quite fun. But it also mentions sort of about this week and the balancing act, and it's what I mentioned at the start about balancing the sort of life and the family and the business and the social life and the media and social media, and the being the media and going to these events and having the travel aspect, and then having the aspect of getting all that emotion and all that energy that surrounds a fight event, and all that emotion that you're right in front of you, because it builds you up. These are people that you know and you care for and you spend a lot of time with, and watch them train and watch them bleed and watch them break, and then physically, not mentally, and then you watch them go into the cage and put it all in the line in their boxes in front of thousands of people. I mean, it's a flipping emotional experience, let me tell you that for certain. And I'm definitely much better at controlling my emotions, but there's a lot of adrenaline that happens even when filming. And like I said, I feel much more professional now, where I know what I want because I've got my notes, so I can go in there and actually enjoy that a little bit more now, which is cool. But also the other notes that I've just sort of written from last week is, I sort of reflect on this week, and I talk about balance. And it sort of comes along to what Leo actually said when we got off the podcast, and it was a really valid point, because he said about how he needed a little bit more balance, and he was just overfrying his brain in regards to he was doing too much with MMA, he was doing too much work, and it was just burning him out. And I said, you're 100% right, and you shouldn't work like that, really, 100% flat out. You just never should. You just never should, and it's never going to be the right answer for most people. And I said to him as well, Naval always says you should work like an athlete or like a lion, where you preserve your energy, you wait until it's not dark, when it's cool, premium conditions, and then you sprint, and then you eat, and then you sleep, and then you recover like an athlete or like a lion would. But I did sit there and I did think, I'll be honest, I'll just be honest here, because that's all that this space is. I'm not trying to portray an image, I'm not trying to say I'm this or say I'm that, or how I do things is better or wrong or worse. It's just completely all individual. I'm just trying to be transparent with how I felt, because I did have this feeling this past week, to be perfectly honest. I just looked at what I was doing and how I was doing. I thought, is this sustainable? Is this sustainable? I had to ask myself the real question. I look in the mirror and think, is this actually sustainable? Because it's a lot. And I look at this bullet point, and I'm not sat here, by the way, saying I've got the hardest job in the world, I work harder than anyone. It's not what I'm saying. There's no game comparison or likeliness I'm trying to make to absolutely anyone Whenever I speak within the shed, I'm literally speaking within the confines of my head. I'm not even joking. So when I express this, I just mean in terms of, for me personally, when I observe it, because I'm just recapping on this bullet point, and I've put no sleep because of the pay-per-view, which often happens on a Saturday when they finish at 7 a.m. I've come straight home into my podcast. This is when I went down to... I've come straight home into my podcast when I was in London, sorry. Then I recorded my chat like I'm doing now. I chopped it up and edited it until 1 a.m. My retinas were absolutely burnt. They're shut in. I got it done, and I'm proud because I could have easily have done it tomorrow. And that's really, really true. I'm holding dates and schedules as a priority to make sure my podcast is out every Monday, GBTV every Tuesday as a bare minimum. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm just at this point now where it's like, I don't actually care what my timetable looks like if I can just hit my quotas. So if I can get my GBTV on a Tuesday, I can get my pod on a Monday, on Sunday I film and record, I chop and edit. If I can do all those things, I look at it and I think, realistically, throughout the week, when I add in going to London, then editing that, then working on the project, sending it out, then the videos, then for me, it's a lot of stuff. It is a lot of stuff. And I look at it and I think, am I going to get burnt out? Am I kidding myself? Am I kidding myself and lying to myself? But the truth is, I do. Like, I'll be honest, I truly do believe I'm in a place now where I've done a lot of jobs. And even with the fitness stuff, I've done that. I've got thousands of fitness videos. People forget that. I've got like 3,000 fitness videos. I looked at it the other day, I was like, flip, I don't even remember that. I'm not saying the other word just because YouTube always just doesn't like that. Hence why I sound like I'm on a Balamori episode sometimes. But it was a lot for me. It's a lot for me, and I just started prioritising those dates and saying, you know what, no matter what it looks like, I'm doing those dates. I don't care if I have to stay up till 4, because guess what? I've done it my whole life. I'm very capable of it. Is it premium health? Probably not. Do I always want to do it? Probably not. But am I more than capable of sitting down at 12 p.m. after waking up, having a workout, having a protein shake, sitting down after having a stretch, sitting down going from 12 p.m. until 4 a.m.? I am. Like, I'll be straight up. I'm capable of doing it. I'll do it. If it's just working on a project or clipping together a project or things that don't always take crazy cognitive energy. And what I'll do as well is, just to try and make it a little bit easier for me to do that, is I'll just flip between, in those workloads, times where if I'm a little bit more high energy and I've got a little bit more effort and a little bit more conscious thought to be, okay, I'll do a task where I don't really want to have to do this as much. I'll do that when I've got that energy and I've got that sort of, right, I've got a bit of motivation, I can drive through this, But then when I'm a little bit like, right, okay, day's getting a little bit longer, back's hurting a little bit, been here a while, just a little bit drained, a little bit flat, I'll just sort of put some music on, have a little sip of water, go have a stretch, and I'll just come back and I'll work on a creative task. I'll make a video about my travels, I'll make a food video, I'll do a voiceover, I'll work on a creative project, I'll work on a little piece of my clothing brand, or whether it's the project of my brand deals that I'm sending out, which is all but finalised. They'll be finalised this evening, which I said last week I was going to do. In an ideal world, I would have had it absolutely done and dusted by the time I'm speaking to you and sent out, and I'm annoyed that I didn't, but it'll be done by tonight, and a day or two over has annoyed me, but it isn't the worst. At least it is done. But this week, that is again a big priority to send that out, because now I've gone to the effort of making those brand deals and those packagings and understanding how I can bring value and how I can separate myself and send my message out and provide value and idea and insight, because I've essentially drawn up a whole folder of what I'm doing with Food Fighters, exactly a full vision into my brain and everything about it, so that people can get a transparent look, and I can just send it to brands. I'm going to be like, right, cool. I'm not going to ask. I'm just not going to ask for anything. I'm just going to send it. I'm going to say, look, here's where my mind's at. Here's what I'm trying to do. Sound like something you'd be interested in partnering in? If it sound like something we'd probably work well together, or you think we'd be a good fit, let's talk about some brand opportunities. And there were some brand opportunities at the end in regards to how I could interweave their brand in my content, however way I was going to do that. So everyone was catered and tailored to each one. Did it take ages? Yes. Did it take ages to re-strategize those for different people to send to? A little while, yes. But did I feel like the payoff was going to be big? I felt like it was, because I literally started thinking, I was like, right, if I send 100, I just send 100. I personalize and send 100 with messages and intros like I know how I do, and with DMs like I know how I want to go about it. If I just do that, ask for nothing, to the right brands, to the right people, in the right way, in the right medium, 3 people are going to say yeah. 3 people are going to say yeah, and you ain't going to be able to buy a package. And I hate the fact I said ain't, but sometimes that just comes out of me. You're not going to be able to buy a package likely for less than £500. So if we get 3 yeses, we're looking at just a very basic minimum salary then on just, or 1 monthly salary on just free sponsorship, on free brand deals there, which are going to be fairly subtle, organic and natural to the brand. I'm going to do them in a way which feels authentic and not too pushy, but in a way that I can actually promote it if I do like the product, and if I don't, I'm just not going to use it. Because I think that's always a big thing for me, is brand and protecting what I put my name to personally. But last couple of things, I guess, is I'll have a sip of water before this, which leads me on to my next sort of thought really throughout the week, because I thought, you know what I can do? I can just write as many nice messages as I can. I thought that's how I can level up this week. Doesn't sound very glamorous. Sounds a bit random. Sounds like a bit, you're not going to get too much instant gratification from that. I wasn't really doing it with an ulterior motive. And to be perfectly honest, there is a little bit, because I get a good feeling out of it. I do. Just feels kind of nice. And I think if you're someone that at Christmas enjoys giving you a gift more than you do receiving it, you probably will when it's a compliment, because a compliment is exactly that. It's a gift. And sometimes I think, again, I don't mean this to be sort of cringy and cliche, but it is true. I thought about it recently. I did just think, if you have a positive thought about someone or something when you're having a conversation or you're in their vicinity and you don't say it, it's very much just a waste. And you never know what the impact can be of that. And in truth, I know for me personally, it always just felt uncomfortable to do. That's why I wouldn't do it. If I just thought, how do you really kind of like his shoes, or or I started saying to my mates, like when I started seeing them, saw my mate once, I was like, I really like your trousers. The trousers are really nice. I like the colour. They go well. I kind of like the beige. It's not really what I would wear usually, but it's kind of a nice little bit of inspiration. And to me, that just feels so natural now. It feels so natural. But for me, at one point, it felt so unnatural, and I just would never say that. I just wouldn't. I don't know why I couldn't tell you. Well, I could tell you. Not enough practice. And I guess if it's something that you don't do, and typically in male boy groups, you're not going to do that, and we never did, really. Do a lot more now, I'll tell you that. It's kind of cool to see a little bit more. Definitely within some friendship groups I have, do it a lot, do it a lot. Just do it all the time, to be perfectly honest. It's just how it should be, really. It's just your conscious thought, but it's just positive. I don't even know why sometimes it's spun to be a weird thing, really, but it's reps. I started realising, the more I'd done it, the more I got comfortable doing it. And then I started doing it in scenarios where I thought, I would never have done this before. I started saying things I would never have said before. Just like general compliments, and it's not even that crazy of thoughts, but I just don't know. I was never comfortable enough or confident enough to do that. I don't know. I think a lot of people would probably say that. I don't think there's a lot of people going around and just saying, oh yeah, if I was just chatting to one of my mates or saying opposite, and I was at work and someone had on da-da-da, and I thought about da-da-da, I just said it as we were conversing. I don't think many people would say that. I think a lot of people would feel quite uncomfortable in that. So I just started doing that more. Thought that could be good. Kind of enjoyed it. I did. Just like a few nice pick-me-ups, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not doing them inauthentically. I'm just doing them straight up. And as well, I started doing them now where it's kind of cool, because obviously in the general scheme of things, I've got no followers. In the general scheme of things, I'm a drop in the ocean. I imagine in 5-10 years, it's going to be a different story. But at the moment, in terms of metrics and numbers and followers and all that kind of the vanity metrics, I'm insignificant, essentially. But sometimes when you're a creator, and I'll know this because I was, that's why I do this, because I once was there. When you're a creator and you have 200 followers and you've got 200 posts and you're making kind of cool stuff that maybe people aren't seeing or liking, or you don't really know how to post it in a way which is getting good engagement, I I love reaching out to these people and just telling them how good they are, or what they're doing, or what I like, or what post I came across and why I liked it. I think that's kind of nice. I just think that's kind of sick. And I think it did happen. It did happen a couple of times when I was started and whatnot, but not very often. But it shouldn't have happened very often because I didn't make very good content. So I didn't really deserve those messages. But there's some people out there that make really good content that just for whatever reason, don't have the recognition yet. So sometimes you never know what a message could do. And it's at a point now. Sometimes I've dropped messages like a year ago and people are sometimes coming to me now. It's like, oh, thanks for that. I'm really consistent with XYZ now because you just da-da-da-da. I'm just like, wow, that's the coolest thing ever. I'm just seeing these people create sick MMA pages and they're like, oh, thank you for the encouragement. I really appreciate that. You reached out and was like super appreciative of my work, because I just started thinking, in my line of work, it's good when I analyse MMA to pick up absolutely everything that someone's doing in their job to truly understand what they're doing well. And then when I started realising that with fighting in the context of MMA and started factoring absolutely everything, travelling to their job, to their gyms, or changing their family, or having conversations in different language, or fight week, or the posters, or the media, or the fight, or I try to understand everything so I can have as much context. So now when I see people's work and I see that they're doing good stuff, I just think I might as well reach out and tell them. You never know what that's going to do. They might just take no notice of it. They might just see it and not even read it. They might read it and say it made their day, in which case it's cool. They might read it and just tap double like, in case I have no emotional attachment to that either. I just putting it out there. It's just a thought. And you never even know what that thought does. Sometimes it may even think, it would actually be kind of cool if I worked with a creative in this way, because they've done quite a cool title design there. If I could get that title design and implement that with my next comic book, I could maybe work that in a way where in my comic book, oh my goodness, I've got this out loud. What an absolute belter. Segue of the century. I need to say it before I forget it. I really hope this is recording. I've been working on, in my plan of my Food Fighters full vision, full mood board, everything I've been given to brands, I've got in it future projects. And a future project I thought of this week that I really wanted to do and I want to document is I want to create a cookbook. I really want to create a cookbook. Something me and my mum have always bonded over our entire life, whether it was cooking or looking in old cookbooks, or now she's even created one where she writes in her recipes and updates it for me. So it would just be the coolest thing ever if I could combine my travel photography with my poetry and then cooking the meals which are inspired by the travels with the ingredients. And then I've already even done the front cover, which is Japanese inspired, like the logo of Food Fighters is. I want it plain white. I want it the red for the Japanese rising sun. I want it completely plain white, rising sun, and then I want the Food Fighters crossed out, etched in it, in a brush design that I've already got as the logo. And I want it to look like the coffee brand, the Japanese ground coffee brand, and I want to combine all those together. And then I want to take it to the next level and pay homage to the Japanese culture even more than just the logo, even more than my love of the cuisine, the culture, the technology that I'm literally using all the time, the Mizuno golf clubs I've got, the minimalism, the sleekness, the efficiency that they do things with, and then the actual clothing designs and all things that I'm inspired by their culture on a daily and consistent basis. I can then integrate the comic side of it, the Japanese animation side of it, where I can work with my boy Federico, who we've done amazing work with, who I just reached out to once because I saw what he was doing, and he had a couple of thousand followers, don't get me wrong, but he was just so crazy talented. I just wrote him about 4 messages, whole Instagram messages. I was like, this is crazy. This is so sick. I'm watching your work and it's just incredible. I've never truly even appreciated digital art until I've seen your work. Just talking straight up facts as well. I'm not lying. I'm just speaking from the heart. As I saw it, I was like, wow. I didn't even understand the intricacy of what they were doing, these people, these designs. And he was documenting it. I just said to him, mate, yeah, obviously I'm not taking any credit for this, it's all him, he's doing everything. But I literally just said to him, sometimes I feel like I see other people's ability more than they see it themselves, because when you're in it, and it's the same for me even when I was in it, and I am in it, you look at it as so unachievable, these grand goals and these crazy places that you can go, because you're starting from scratch with most of it, that sometimes that when you step away from it and you've got a little bit of skin in the game, and you can see that your work's very similar to this guy, and this guy has this many followers, and now he's made brand deals with this person and gets paid for this role, and then this company hire his work for this freelance, and then he makes clothing out of this design and then does this, and his work doesn't look too much like this, which you've done, and you've only done it for a few months. You can do whatever you want with this, just stay consistent and stay true to the game, because you're incredibly skilled. And you start reaching out with messages like that, you start developing good relationships, and that's a really cool thing that I've been doing, is just finding people around the world that are in things like design and art, and they're just even doing little things like dropping in songs they like to listen to that I've never even heard of, that I'm listening to, and I'm like, this is a sick song, I really like it. And it's just little ways to sort of even enrich my life, and finding little ways that I can just take little fruits from around the day without having to need to get those pick-me-ups and those fixes with things like retail therapy maybe, or stupid stuff like going to Starbucks and treat myself to a coffee. And I know it sounds trivial and small, but genuinely these are just small shifts I'm just trying to make, and how I'm trying to re-engineer how I think, just to be a little bit more just dialed into doing a better job, to be perfectly honest with you. Really, that's what it just comes down to. I just want to try and make casuals good. Like, legitimately, I just want to try and make it good. And that's what I'm saying about that cookbook, and that's what I'm saying about even just brainstorming ideas, because obviously, like I said, I had it in the futures part of the project, because that's exactly what I want to do. I want to create that cookbook, and that will just be a really cool dream come true. When we talk about manifesting, because I've already actually, I forget, I've got a fitness book. I spent the whole of not the whole of lockdown, a long time in lockdown, writing a fitness book. And then I was lucky enough that I knew a friend that happened to be a writer and an editor, and he was an absolute wizard. And I'm so grateful for Alex Standen for giving up his time, for going through my work and just making it super polished and refined, and making me feel like I had the literacy of a year 4. But I managed to call in a favour, and he really helped me out in that, and I was super appreciative. I think I cooked him a meal or made him a cheesecake or something. I done something in that way. That's, again, it's just coming back to basic principles of leverage. And as stupid as it sounds, sometimes you have to leverage what you can leverage. And if that's scrabbling together some ingredients at university for a cheesecake and going to town with making a delicious one because you know it's his favourite, and designing it nice and making it the best flavour using the best ingredients, because he spent even just an hour, but it was so good. He spent an hour of high quality work to refine a book. And now I had a fitness book, and it's pretty bloody good. I'm actually saying it because I want to go back through it, revise it a little bit, change a few sections, because obviously you evolve and you learn and things change in the fitness space naturally. Revise a few sections and put it out there now, and just be like, by the way, if you're just new to this, Casual's Guide to Fitness, Casual's Guide to MMA Fitness. This is what happens when I start brainstorming. It's just, I love just talking, just this in truth. This is why I love brainstorming. This is why I love brainstorming. This is why I love just sitting in this studio. And my family came around yesterday, and a few of them came up to it, and I opened the door because they really wanted to have a look at it. Because, again, just to preface it, I'd never picked up a screwdriver in my life. Next thing I said, I was going to build a shed and a podcast studio. The world of YouTube University got me to a place where it isn't in bad nick, and it looks somewhat like a studio. And they came around and it was like, it's really cool, and I was like, oh, ignore it, it's a bit of a mess, it's a bit of a state, because behind the camera it is, because to see what you see here is a bit of an operation, it's a little bit of a setup, which, as I say out loud, reminds me I have to make the PDF document to send over Tim Wheaton at Calf Kick Sports MMA, because I said about it the other week, I was going to send him a lighting PDF that I had for my agency, because I was changing my identity, so I need to do that, matter of urgency. But as I'm saying that, as my family came round and they said, oh wow, it's actually really cool, and they were super impressed and super shocked, and I was just very sort of, didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, it's a mess in there. It looked well cool before. Should have seen it before. But I'm looking around and I'm seeing the wall, I'm seeing the design, the lights set up, the TV on the wall, the sofas, my mic's all here and everything's here for me, and I'm looking around and I've got these 4 walls, and it just, it's like metaphorical, four walls, I guess, but physical as well. And it just feels like I get to sit in here and just go through the dialogue of my thoughts from a week. I really enjoy it, to be perfectly honest. I don't really care how long it is. I don't care where people get up to and switch off. It's just nice for me to just... It's quite therapeutic. I find it very therapeutic. And I understand how people say they enjoy podcasting and doing it for their entire life. And I'm sure it's something that I'll do my entire life and something that I want to do for my entire life and document the process and go in any weird tangent with any weird conversation. I don't know. Just go wherever ever the mind wanders, really. Sort of have a look at towards the end of these notes of what I've made in a week, because like I said, yeah, just to recap on that one, that was the cookbook. I want to do that. And that's sort of the reason I was inspired by that idea as well, was because it was my mum's birthday, and again just not much money for exuberant expenses, and I've never saw my mum as an exuberant expense because she's always been a necessary expense. And the thing I've always spent the most money on, or the biggest cost I've ever spent in my life ever, is always my mum. Always, it literally is. Whether it was when I flew her to Thailand, and bought her even a flipping Aspinall of London passport holder and all of that stuff, when it was Orient Express tickets when I was a young age, when it was maybe sort of Longchamp bags or whatever it was. My point is not to say, oh, I flexed and I did this. It wasn't. My point is literally the opposite. I would never ever spend those amounts of money on anything unless it was her, realistically. I just wouldn't. And that's why it's a little bit upsetting. I'm at a point now, but I understand the journey, I understand the grind, I understand the hustle of being at a point where I can't do that. Because when I've been capable, I've always done it. And that's the thing, like I said, is always... I've never in my life gone to a really expensive restaurant and paid hundreds of pounds to go and eat a meal. I've never done it. And I've had the opportunity, obviously, living in London my whole life and having friends that like to do that and people that like to do that. I like to do that. It's kind of nice. It's nice to go to these restaurants and cool places and whatnot. And I've had the means to do it many times. I mean, pretty much from the age of 15, I've had the means to do it, to be perfectly honest, because I've never had many outgoings because, like I said, live within my means. And even a couple £100, I always thought in my head, well, it's only a couple of weekends work sort of thing, you know, so I could always ration it out, and always had a couple of weekends work in the bank anyway. So that's what I was saying. It was always had the possibility of doing it, but I never wanted to. But I always wanted to give those experiences to her, and I was always happy to pay that amount when that was the case. So being resulted to being the oldest you've been and being able to give the least you've been able to give since literally about 12 years old, I'm not even joking with that, it's kind of wild. Like, it is kind of wild. It's nasty. Like, it's not a nice feeling, but it makes you think, right, how can I give back in different ways? How can I... And knowing my mum, that's so easy because she asked for so little, and it really is just time. Like, she genuinely is the least materialistic person I've ever met. So if I can give her time, and that's so befitting, because I always say in a lot of the poems I write is a lot of talk of the stoic mindsets of people like my mum and my granddad, which I just try and learn from so much. And it's difficult. Like, it really isn't easy. It really isn't easy to be like that often, to be that stoic and be calm and clear-headed and always take the next approach. And I try and learn that from them, but like I said, it really isn't easy. And obviously it was her birthday this week, and I don't have the money. I don't have the money to spend on anything like I have. And I know she wouldn't care or even want that. She genuinely wants me to be happy and be able to give her time sometimes, because she realises that, like I was saying before in regards to my granddad and her having such wisdom, is there's no more valuable commodity, and you really do realise that. And again, not trying to be trite, but as you grow up and you feel the impact of time way more, and this ties into, I've tried this thing where I just write every day. I thought I want to get better at my writing. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy writing poems. I enjoy just doing whatever. So I just started doing it. I started doing it every day, and I started thinking, right, I'm gonna read one from the week on the podcast at the end of the week, because all that they are, in truth, is completely one thought, one take, just type in as it comes, no thought into it, complete flow state, just whatever comes into my mind, I'm typing out. I don't really look over it. I don't really think of any narrative or any structure, absolutely anything. There's no, I'm going to do it for this long or that long. I just start a word, genuinely, I'll start a word, and then I'll just see where it goes. And then I looked at them throughout all of the week, and I just thought, I really liked them, and I could see that my skill and the inspiration I was taking from listening to so many people that were just so good at wordplay. I just started listening to people that were just sick at wordplay and incredible storytellers. And then you go into the rap culture, you start realizing that some people in rap are just phenomenal storytellers. You look at people like Potter Paper. I don't know many better storytellers in the UK. Now, you may not be a fan of that style of music or that sound or that lifestyle or the message he's saying, whatever else. He's authentically telling his story. So you have to respect that. You have to respect it because it's a story from an underdog to someone who's done very successful things and given a lot back to a lot of people in disadvantaged positions. So you have to respect that, whether you enjoy it or not. But then when you actually look at his skill, on a skill for skill basis, storytelling is just phenomenal. So I started listening to so much of him and just other people that were super skilled in that realm just to try and get better. And like I said, I read it back and it was just a little bit too much. It was just I got to a point where I was like, fine, I'll just read it, anything, I don't even care anymore. And I'm more than happy to, but I read something and I was like, oh, got a bit deep there. Got into things I hadn't even really thought of before, or even thought of in a certain way. And it really went to show that when I write every day, I just go very, like I said, it's again a form of meditation for me. I just type. That's all I can describe it as. I don't think. I really don't. There's no structure or how I'm going to flow it or what's the next word or topic or way I'm going to combine the words. It really isn't. I start on the first and I just think of the next or however feels best for that. Occasionally I'll pause and I'll look back and I think, okay, I'm just going to switch direction a little bit, and then I'll just consciously think, right, I'll probably try and mix the flow a little bit or just try a little pattern of rhyme or wordplay or whatever else I'm trying to do. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is the fun of it. Like, this is the fun, and this is what I love about casuals. I just put everything on here. It's like, I haven't got a clue. Let's see what I can do with it. This is what's fun about this platform, and this is what I love about this podcast and chatting to people that follow the journey, is because the best thing about casuals is I'm going to do absolutely anything I fancy doing, however obscure, if it's poems, if it's photography, if it's videography, if it's food, if it's travel, design, clothing, manufacturing, sports, whatever it is, I don't know yet, could pivot into anything within the sport. I'm just going to show you how it goes, see what we can do with it, see if we can make it roll. If I don't like it, I'll probably stop it. If I enjoy it, you'll probably see me do it more, see where we can go with it. I just think it's kind of a fun journey. Let's see what we can do with the poems. But I was going to read them, but it was a bit emotional. Felt like I couldn't really in the end. And then I thought, the best things I ever say, I heard Gary Vee say it this week. The things that aren't recorded, and it's so true, because I always just stay there and I just think, well, okay, give myself a word, and I just start talking on the word and just flowing with my thoughts and whatnot about it, and just trying to play with the words and things and just be playful with it, not overthink it, and just see what I can do. And it's always my best work. Of course it is when the camera's off. So I was like, right, I'm going to just flip the camera on. Lights are on, camera's on. I'm imagining I got some butterflies there. Like, legitimately, I got some butterflies there. I hate that feeling, but I love it. I feel a little bit sick in the stomach because I'm getting deep in visions of me just being on a podcast, and I'm likely going to tell this person I'm never going to do it. Who knows? Let's see where I end up in 10 years. Likely never going to do it, but again, who knows? I'm on a podcast. It's on a set. They've got the key lights here. They've got the lights here, like I've got now. This is why I'm saying it's easy to imagine, because I can see parts of it. and they go, Will, I love your poems, and you say that you do them just off the top and off the bat. It's like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've got the daily diary, and I'm just writing there. Like, yeah, but people say that the post-production is different, and you actually take different time. You actually think about this more often. I was like, someone's going to shove the camera in my face. So I thought I'm going to have to just start learning how to freestyle, I think. I just thought, I'm not going to walk around freestyling my thoughts, probably ever, to people, realistically. I'm just never going to do it. But if it ever is called upon, I'm going to act like I've never practiced. If you're listening to this, you're going to know, but I'm going to act like I've never practiced. And I'm going to be half okay. People are going to be like, that's actually alright. Like, it wasn't that bad. It's not that easy. And that wasn't terrible. It was like, give him a couple props for that. And in my head, I'm going to be like, yeah, I've been practicing that for 5 years. Just for that tiny little pat on the back, that small slice of approval. So I was like, I want to do it now. I've got the cameras on, my stomach went a little bit, but I was like, cool, let's embrace that feeling. Let's do freestyles. I'm just going to flash a random word or sequence I can think of, and let's just do it. Why not? Let's just relax and just allow the ability to mess up. And if we mess up, we laugh, and if we mess up, we try and make it a little bit better, and we see what we can do with it. So we'll go Jake Paul and the fight night at UFC Nashville. The UFC at UFC Nashville, a little bit like Dustin Poirier or DP Fightville. At the top of the card was Corey Sandhagen, or the Sandman. The performance showed that he wasn't just trying to score a performance of the night, he was trying to etch another notch on the grand plan, the master plan, because if you've seen what he's done after he faced Yan, he chucked a knee up the middle and then he lost it against TJ. I think he's just been a little bit sloppy. Like, I'm not even going to finish that sentence, and I think that he's so much more high-end and deserving. I think that one day that we're going to look back and realise that you should have started swerving Corey Sandhagen or Ginger Jelly, because every time he watches, I think he's must-see on the telly. And then we have a look at Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, and we'll see what they've done. I think anything that they've done, they've generated an eye-watering sum. And if you had a son that managed to generate the business and attention that Jake Paul does, you'd be pretty proud, because when you look, he's actually a star now. You look at followings, it's 24 mil. You look at McGregor, it's 40. And yes, that's a big deal, because in this game, that's a big metric. And when you have a look at it, it's a little bit hectic, because when you think about it, Jake Paul and Conor McGregor, it shouldn't make sense. And at one time, I told you were delusional and you didn't have 2 cents. But now when you think about it, it makes a few pence, because we're talking about millions of pay-per-views. And if you're talking you're not going to watch it, that's a lie between me and you, because I'm solely invested. Jake actually kind of looked okay, and Nate really did get bested. But we saw everything that we expected to see from a Nate Diaz fan, and I'm kind of happy he left the UFC. It's kind of fun seeing him in a boxing realm, and I think at no point was he ever in the helm of that fight. And if it went right, I don't know if it would have been different that night. He was talking about a bad shoulder. I don't know if that was down to it. But one thing I do know is Jake Paul, I mean, that loss, he will never quit, because he came back with good footwork and started hitting check hooks. I mean, check look. Jake Paul stepped back and hit an uppercut. An uppercut. He hit an uppercut stepping back. That's like what we was talking about Corey Sandhagen way back when last week. And you have the cheek to tell me that Jake Paul isn't doing something special. You must be nuts. He's 7-1 as a pro, and he's doing it on the stage at that amount of pressure and delivering clutch. You can tell me these are old men and they're in the MMA game and whatever else, but he's not necessarily just doing this for fame and wealth. He's doing this for a little bit more. You can see that if you actually look behind the door. I went on his podcast and didn't expect what I did see or did saw, because he had his best friends there, and I thought they were going to be a little bit naive. Gonna be honest, I thought they were going to be a little bit naive, but good answers they really did achieve, because when they spoke to Jake Paul, he really opened up. And then you start realizing that you have this image built up of someone that you really don't even know, and your opinions and hatred, and they just fall down like snow in Omaha when it gets cold. And I even saw Bud Crawford the other day, and that was cold. And then I'm going to come back to the story until it gets old, because these days in MMA world, 4 days is old. And a story that got told from then, now, it gets frowned upon in the MMA community. I don't know what you want from me. What you trying to do to me? They're trying to chuck me in like I'm stewing meat, and I'm stewing beef, because it's taken a long time to get any appreciation. Start looking at depreciation when you have a look at these people that have been in the game for 20 years. Sometimes you do see the scars and you do see the tears behind the scenes. When I went to Fight Star Championships this weekend at the O2 Indigo, it was crazy. You see it from a whole different perspective, and you just can't help but thinking, this is what made me love the sport. And when you get there and you see it in its full, you just realise that this goes way deeper than what we see. This goes way deeper, and you can't even be a sleeper on the fact that they put their life on the line. And then I went online and saw Twitter online that someone said that they found it cringe. I think that you should go back to your hinge and your swiping, because this sport isn't for you if you don't like that. Because you have to go in with a mentality. You have to. It's him or me. Otherwise, it's going to be you sleeping on the canvas after eating a knee. And it is deadly if you don't go into this game with full health and full attention. That's why nowadays you see the amateurs, and it's ridiculous. That's why you see it. You'll get litigation if you go there and you don't prepare. Because I swear to God, people don't come in out of shape like a little pair 40-year-old rolling off the street, trying to get a beat down on a young kid that's never seen a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class in their life. They'll have you cutting through their guard like a knife. And I'm going to fizzle out of this song because I don't even think it's a song, but then it made me think of Song Yadong just off the top of their head. Flipping hell. It was a thin line between life or death, like it was a thong. Didn't even want to have to do that to Song Yadong. But he's one of my favourites, and generally a really scary and terrifying prospect. I'm glad that he came out and he told his perspective from a victim's prospect, because it really spoke to people, I feel, that encounter issues and they don't know how to deal with it because they feel like less of a man. You realise you see Song Yadong standing there and even he's holding his hands. You realise sometimes it's a better idea to walk away, take your health and walk away, and take your mental health and walk away, because that's not a game you want to play. And anyway, I'll sign off on that. So keep it casual. And that was just a freestyle off the hat. I can't believe I just did that, but that was fun. Keep it casual next week, every Wednesday.